our webinar today. The topic today is around marketing. And I was going to comment that when we do advising with clients, marketing is a big part of what we talk about with them, that they've got to get sales, they've got to get marketing. So it's an area that we're not experts, but we are saying that has to be something to improve. And Kelly, you've come in and worked with some of my clients directly where we've shared what things we do. I know for accountants, it's hard to focus on that very busy people, but they want to grow their business. So I'm hoping people are really excited today to learn about some of the things that they can do. So they've already seen our pictures as presenters. I'll facilitate today. Kelly, you're our director of marketing for our company. And so that puts you in this role of doing this and sharing what things we know. Okay, so a couple of housekeeping things. Today is a 1 credit hour course. If people attend the entire time and answer all 3 polling questions, then they get credit for the course. I probably won't announce the poll questions, but they will pop up on people's screens to do that. If people complete that, then we automatically send, that's okay. We'll send the email within the next week for that, so you don't have to reach out to us to do that. You can see in the bottom right, replay slides. Slides were not sent out ahead of time. Those will be available after as well as replay. And the last thing, and I really will emphasize this, we will watch as much as we can question section. So people can't speak up and just talk during the session, but I will watch those. So if Kelly says something or doesn't say something that you wanted to hear about, let us know and I'll make sure that we can get those kind of things in for people.
And I will say, so as the director of marketing who's behind a lot of these webinars that we do, that the biggest question we get literally within an hour of the webinar completing is, when am I going to get my CPE certificate? Which always tells me you either showed up late or you didn't listen to Tom at the beginning. So
yes.
I love that last piece. You're always like, this is key here. So
and we'll to the most common question is, were the slides available beforehand? And
yes.
They weren't. You can get them after. So yeah, thanks for reinforcing that. Okay, so a little bit about our company, and Kelly and I work for the same company. So in 2002, Jody and Adam started the company as a traditional CPA firm, so taxes and audit kind of work. Starting in 2004, they started offering CFO services and back office accounting related services. And then fast forward to 2013, and we became a fully distributed firm. So the first accounting firm in the country that did a remote office, lots of flexibility from a employee standpoint and a client standpoint. That was also about the time where we really doubled down on CFO services and said that's going to be the primary service offering that we have. Mid last year in 2022, we joined Anders CPA and Advisors. So we are now the Summit Virtual CFO by Anders, and we're a division of Anders CPA and Advisors, which makes us a remote and a hybrid firm, as Anders is a St. Louis-based firm. Okay, so that's about us. Kelly, I just said your name and said that I had worked with you. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, so I always like to start with just a couple of fun facts about me. Tom, you've seen a couple of these pictures before, but I always have to share this one. So as Tom knows, I live in the mountains in an area that is beautiful. And this is the view from my deck. Not this time of year. This was in the fall a few years ago. And it was like such a great picture to see the fall colors changing, and then also, or the leaves changing, and then also the snow hitting the top of the mountains. The view is always evolving throughout the year. So anyway, I always have to brag about that. So another piece so where I live is outside of a town called Leadville, Colorado. And Tom also knows about me that I'm a big reader, and I actually used to work in publishing, so I have a lot of authors who reach out to me and ask me to review their books. And this one came up on my list of books that somebody asked me to review, and I was like, I have to review this book. I have to read this book because this is Baby Doe Tabor, the story of Baby Doe Tabor. It's a fictionalized story, but Baby Doe Tabor is part of the history of Leadville.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so it's a great book if you love historical fiction. I'm not a big historical fiction fan, but I loved this book. And then third fun fact about me is that this is my Chihuahua, and her name is actually Baby Doe. We named her Baby Doe after Baby Doe Tabor. So I was like, I have to share this. So this is our little Chihuahua and our mountain background. All
really
things coming together.
People will notice me being in the middle of Indiana. I did not share pictures of what outside my window looks like, because it's gray and there's a tree. That's about it.
Yeah, I'm pretty spoiled with my view. So we're going to talk about omni-channel marketing, but I want to just back us up here a little bit and just talk about content marketing in general and what that means. I am, there's all these different types of marketing. And I think that people often, think of marketing, as like try to lump everything together. Like I've been
Yeah.
called, I must be creative and a designer because I'm in marketing. I'm like, no, I'm actually not at all. I'm really not I'm not a designer at all. But I come from a content marketing background. This is, I've always been very, a big content marketing person, and I believe in the power of content marketing. So wanted to talk about kind of what content marketing is before we get into the omni-channel marketing. So content marketing, what is it? It's about sharing your knowledge and experiences in a compelling way, transforming your insights into a dynamic force that not only reaches, but genuinely connects with your audience, fostering a community of engaged and loyal followers. So I like to think of this like, we being in an accounting firm, we can put out content about accounting things, right? We can put out content about tax. We can put out content about financial forecasting and these things that we do. We put out that type of content. But some of the content that actually attracts people to us or is we put out content about running a remote company. We put out content about, our story of becoming a remote company. And Jody's, if anyone follows us and knows our founder, Tom went through kind of the history, and our founder, one of our co-founders, he's known for wearing Hawaiian shirts, right? And we tell that story, and those things help kind of humanize us and help people connect with us. So they could be in any field, but they read some of our content, and they kind of piques their interest about who we are and what we're doing. So it's not just about putting out content about the whatever field you're in, but also
Subject
just
matter. Yeah.
putting out a variety of content that helps people connect with you. And so what does content marketing include? So Tom, I wanted to ask you this, and you've already seen the slides, but I want to ask you, when you think of content marketing, what are the things that come to mind?
Probably the biggest one that I think of is social media, right? Who's pushing things out so that people can see things from a content standpoint. That's kind of the main one that I would think of before reading through all the different things you had in your slides.
Okay, well, that's cool. It's different than what I thought you were going to say, so that's interesting. So I kind of put together this graphic. This is a lot. This isn't like all encompassing, but these are the things that my team does a lot of. And Tom, I think you maybe wanted to launch a poll question now. So if you want to do that, go ahead. And all right. So, and this is kind of speaking to some of these things. So if you all would answer this question, kind of let us know what types of content marketing you're involved in. But these are the things that my team primarily focuses on, which is, so webinars, here we are now, social media posts, like Tom mentioned, video content, podcasts. We have partnerships that help with kind of helping us get some of this content out, speaking events, articles, blogs, infographics, and ebooks and white papers. So again, this is not all encompassing, but these are a lot of the things that we focus on when it comes to content.
And Kelly, we've got 29 out of 38. So 76% of the people have answered, and 55% are saying social media. Surprisingly, 34% said not applicable, which I would assume means we're not doing any of those, or maybe they don't know. That's a lot that is kind of in the nothing, but social media is by far the biggest at 55%.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's kind of spread out. Yeah, a lot of social. Yeah. Well, cool. So I hope for those of you who are doing nothing, I hope this is very helpful for you, because we'll talk about a lot of things that you can be doing. And, for accounting firms, I work with a lot of, Tom and I both talk with a lot of accounting firm owners. And, I think a lot of firm owners know I gotta be doing something, right? Like, and we feel like we got to start a blog, we got to do those social media posts, whatever that looks like. And sometimes we know we need to, but like, why, right? Like why do we need to do this? It's about building awareness, but I came up with kind of like 5 main reasons that accounting firms should do accounting marketing or content marketing. So for that 31% in the NA category, so hopefully this will convince you. So some of the reasons that you might want to consider content marketing if you're not doing it already, or to reinforce why you're doing it, to demonstrate your expertise. So whether or not you're in a niche, but especially if you're in a niche, demonstrating your expertise in that niche, but also just your expertise as, a subject matter expert in accounting, and whatever those topics are that you're covering in your content. Building trust. So I talked earlier about, those posts that we've done, kind of giving our backstory on how we became a remote firm, and, why Jody always wears Hawaiian shirts, some of those things, those help people get to know us, and Tom and I know we sometimes will meet with an accounting firm owner, or when somebody on our team is doing a job interview, for one of our open roles, people already know us because they see us all over. They see us on YouTube, they see our social media, they get to know us through that content. So we don't even know them, but we're meeting with them, and they know, I shared 3 fun facts. They're going to know where I live, and what I'm interested in, and all of those things.
Yeah, I think the last 3 or 4 interviews I've done, when we say kind of how did you hear about us, it's been completely from watching webinars, watching our podcasts, things like that.
Yeah.
The one thing that dawns on me that your slide gets to is I think a lot of people, me too, when I think of marketing, it's all getting new customers. And so many of these things could apply to making your current customers or clients feel like they're getting more from you and learning more from you, which is really important to retain them as well as just attracting new.
Yeah. So, and that's number 4 there. So that's where engaging and educating clients. So it's not just about your prospective clients, although, it's part of why you do your content marketing, but also your existing clients, and helping educate them and providing value for them on a regular basis. Especially if you're tapping into, like, what are those questions that my clients have, and addressing those questions through your content. Going back to number 3, enhancing visibility, so these webinars are a perfect example. We do these webinars, and, we might have 100 people in the room that are live and attending. But we might get hundreds to thousands of views on our YouTube videos after the fact. So we post these on YouTube afterwards, and then we get a lot of visibility just through that. So 1 hour of our time, but a big reach after the fact. And then differentiating yourself from competitors. So again, if you're working with a specific niche, that's going to be really important. Getting your content out there and helping people see why you're not just everyday, not just your not just your dad's accounting firm, right? But like, what is it about you that makes people connect with you, and or why they should care about the services that you offer.
Yeah, if you were driving down the street and see CPAs on some building, what makes them think you're not the exact same as whatever's inside that building? And having that, for us, we talk a lot about like digital agencies, that many people know that is a key focus area for us. And that's one of the things that differentiates us from other companies.
Yeah, absolutely. So then if you're a digital agency and you're looking for a virtual CFO provider, who's the go-to in your industry, right? And you're gonna come across us no matter like whatever platform you're on, you're gonna find us somewhere, right? Because we're constantly putting out content that speaks directly to that audience.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I haven't convinced you yet, and you have questions, put them in the questions function. We're happy to address questions as they come up throughout the webinar. So content strategy. So this is a typical marketing funnel here, but I just want to kind of walk through how your content is helping turn perfect strangers into promoters of your business. So again, I had that circle of those things that we do, right? And this is kind of how they fall within that marketing funnel. So we've got strangers. We are putting out content through our blog posts, our videos, our podcasts, webinars, social media posts, and then we have our website, right? And that's helping people who've never heard of us before discover us and be attracted to us through that content. Then, through that content, we have these ways that they can now take the next step. So we have landing pages. We build specific landing pages for, I'll get into, more detail on some of these things later. But so we've got landing pages, our ebook, ebooks, white papers, tools. So you might have specific tools if you work with a certain type of audience where you could create, some type of survey or a spreadsheet or, other things that aren't a white paper or ebook, but ways that you can basically collect their email address, that you could then have their email address if you're now doing the next piece, which is email, newsletters. Then you've got your social media posts again. So I had that in attract, but then also to close. So you're constantly reminding them that you exist. You're reminding them of your events that if you're doing them, you're reminding them of your expertise through those social media posts. And then we do our consultation calls. So at that point, if they've been following us for a while, they're interested in what we do. Now we offer a consultation call and we can close them. And then on the delight part of the funnel, I turn that into repeat steps 1 through 3, right? So, and Tom, you brought that up earlier. Perfect point. That just because they're now our clients doesn't mean we forget about them. All of that content that we're producing is also for them to learn, to share. So if we're speaking directly to them and helping them with issues, we're hopeful then our clients are then sharing that information also with their audiences, and whether it's in social media or as referrals, just like, hey, you need to talk to this company that I work with. They're great,
Yeah. And the other thing I like in here, Kelly, with the repetitive is there are people who are going to take a long time to decide. So if they're in that queue and they're thinking this is interesting, it may be that after 2 or 3 months, maybe a year or so, they've seen things enough to say, okay, let me go ahead and engage and do that. And you haven't lost them when they come in the first time and think, well, I'm sort of happy with what I have currently. Maybe I'll think about something different, but we're on their mind if that goes, and that repetitive part can really help that.
Yeah. And we have that all the time. So we will, we'll go out to an event, we'll speak. Somebody has discovered us from that. I don't have speaking on this one because that's less of the content side, but I'll get into why I have that on there. Why I had that on there in the circle image that we looked at earlier. But so they might see us somewhere and they're like, oh, okay, we came to their attention, but then might be 2 years later that they schedule a consultation call, but they've been following us, or once in a while we come across their radar again, and they're reminded that we exist and they go, oh, I kind of need that service, right? And then eventually 2 years later, they reach out. So yeah, it's constant reminders that you exist.
Sure.
All right. So all the types of content marketing and how they kind of flow through how we flow people through the funnel using that content. I wanted to give some tips just on how to create content efficiently. I think this is probably one of the biggest things that I hear from accounting firm owners, from accountants, is I don't have time for this, right? Like how do I make time to write an article or to spend time on social media or whatever. So these are just some tips on how to come up with content efficiently. I'm laughing to myself because that first one, every single time I go to a marketing conference or like a one specific presentation at a marketing conference, every one of them starts with know your target audience. And it drives me absolutely crazy because I'm like, yeah, like, duh,
It's obvious.
but I had to put it in here because it is obvious. But when we sit down to write something, sometimes we forget who we're talking to, right? So if you are going to write a piece of content that you're speaking to me as a marketer, as a business owner, whoever it is that you're trying to speak to, sometimes accountants might speak a little too high level on accounting or get maybe like too into the weeds, right, with the detail. But you got to remember who you're talking to and what you want to get across to them. And your content's going to be more you're going to have better results from your content if you're speaking directly to the target audience. So
do you think you find I like it. So you hate it, it's in there, but there also must be a reason that people are doing it wrong, is the reason it keeps coming up at conferences.
Right.
Do you think there's some reason that some people don't want to target because they think they're eliminating some people? If I get too focused, then I don't want to like minimize the audience I'm talking to. I think that's a fallacy, but I wonder if that's part of the reason.
Well, sure. So especially if you have a specific niche that you're
Hmm.
working with or that you know you want to reach, but then you're like, but I don't want to exclude all the companies, all the
Right.
people, right? So you try to be more general, but you're better off the more specific you do get.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I would agree with that.
but yes, but I think the bigger issue though is a lot of times we're talking as if we're talking to ourselves rather than to the person we're trying to
Mm,
explain it to. And sometimes you gotta, I mean, not dumb it down because that doesn't, but you know what I mean? You have to like get to like where if explain it to me like I'm talking to a kindergartner, right? Like
sure.
that's a chat GPT prompt that you can put in there. Explain it to me like I'm talking to a fifth grader,
Hmm.
right? So sometimes you have to understand like the your clients didn't go to a college for accounting. They don't have their CPA, you know, like you got to get it to where you're explaining it to them on their level.
Yeah.
Um, so next thing is focus on where your audience hangs out. So again, maybe obvious, but I think we forget this sometimes. So, you know, for us specifically, we focus on LinkedIn and we do a lot of videos. So YouTube, we do all the channels, right? But like
Hmm.
we want to focus specifically on where our audience hangs out. And we know through surveys and through experience that they hang out on LinkedIn. So you know, but depending on what niche you're in, and what types of services you provide, your audience might be on, um, Twitter, X, whatever we're
Hmm.
calling it these days. They might be on TikTok, you know, so, and so where your audience is and also balancing that with what your skills and interests are and what you're good at. I'm not a big fan of Clubhouse, for example, but
Mm.
I know we have worked with accounting firm owners who get the majority of their business through Clubhouse. And I'm like, I don't understand it. I can't, I don't get it. But that they're really good at it and they're really good at just talking on a topic and they attract clients through it. So
Sure.
you know, where do people hang out and also kind of balancing that with what you're good at. I would fail at Clubhouse. But make a list of topics where they're interested in. One of the biggest, I think, pieces of advice that like the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten about writing content is to think about the questions that your target audience asks you all the time, or people, what are the questions that people ask you all the time? As an accountant, you probably have a list of these questions that like people, when you say, oh, I'm a virtual CFO and I work with digital agencies. And if you're talking to a digital agency, like there's probably a list of questions that they ask you every time.
Hmm.
Um, so paying attention to that, like that is like a really big key is paying attention to that. When you're meeting with a client, they're asking you questions, just keeping a running list of those questions that people are asking you that you can then address in the content that you're writing, that you're putting out there. Okay, now I'm going to get into a very specific tip. This is called answerthepublic.com. Have you heard of this, Tom?
I have not.
Okay. Okay, so I put together a couple of slides to show the how answerthepublic.com works. So we know who we're talking to, we know where they hang out and how we want to put that get that content in front of them. We've got kind of a list of general topics, right? But now it's still like the brainstorming part is often very hard. Like what do I actually want to say? And you know,
Hmm.
so Answer the Public, there we go. So this is the website. If you go there, this is exactly what you're going to see. This is Neil Patel. He's the founder of Answer the Public.
Hmm.
And my team, we went to the Inbound conference in September in Boston, and we got to see him speak. He's amazing. But he created this Answer the Public, and you can see down in the bottom left corner, I typed into the little search bar, financial forecasting.
Hmm.
You can put in anything. So if you wanted to put in virtual CFO services or cash flow management, whatever that topic is, that it's like a general idea that you have that's like, I should write something about this, but I don't know what to write. So then you click search, and the next screen, this is like one little section of the whole thing. I just took a little snapshot, but this shows you all of the questions that it generates all of these questions or like phrases that people search on when it comes to what you put in. So I put in financial forecasting. Not all of these are perfect, right? So
Hmm.
the first one is the first one I'm looking at, our financial projection. I don't know what that means, right? But you can go through it, right? And you can find little things that help you kind of hone in on a topic, right? So what is financial forecasting and budgeting? Why is financial forecasting important? What is financial forecasting? Kind of, you can see they're like broken up by like the type of search term. So how is financial planning possible without financial forecasting? So it really helps you. I mean, from this, you can probably come up with dozens of ideas of things you can talk about on one particular topic. So you have a general idea of like this one thing I need to talk about. But then now this breaks it up into a variety of all these different ways that you can talk about that topic.
That's cool. It's also putting it in, or you can see the way people are asking the question, that I could see even saying, if I term it this way, it's the most common way to do it versus maybe the way I'm thinking it doesn't really catch someone's attention. That's really interesting that you can do that.
Yeah. So again, like if you have this list of like general topics or questions, but then it's like, okay, I'm going to sit down and write. And I would recommend, like, if you are the one producing content, that you batch your time and have, like, let's say Friday mornings, 2-3 hours, I'm going to work on content. That's what I'm going to do. But the more organized you get with your thoughts before you sit down to do that, the faster you're going to be when you sit down to actually write on the topic. So that's one. Then book recommendations. So if you want to get more into this topic and learn more about content marketing, I thought I'd just throw out a few resources just for things you can, read in your free time if you, want to learn more. So Building a Story Brand is the first book on my list. Tom, you read this, right? Did you read this?
I have not read this one.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
I think I've done the quick summary, but not read the whole book.
Okay, so I've read this a couple of times, and it's like one that we should read and reread. And this is one that really like helps you dial in your audience, like, who am I speaking to, right? And like and dial in like the message that you're speaking to that audience. But it's like one of those books where I'm like, duh, we know this, right? But it really helps you define that and get a better understanding of your messaging for that particular audience.
And I like that this one, it does talk about storytelling, which is in content, but so many things becomes a really compelling way to communicate that I do like that part of it.
Yeah. Well, and storytelling also being, what is the story behind your firm and why should people care, right? Like, so it's not just like telling stories, but it's like also there's always like a story behind, people are going to want to know more about your, where you came, not you came from, but like where your firm came from, that history and, why you specialize in this specific, you can say, well, I specialize in it because I like it, or you can tell a story that helps people connect with you in some way, right? And helps them for whatever reason.
Why does Jody always wear Hawaiian shirts?
Right,
He's got a very good story that supports that.
Yep. They ask you answers. So this is like a guide to content marketing and how to come up with the content marketing topics that you should be covering. And then Everybody Writes by Ann Handley. Quick funny story about this one. So Everybody Writes by Ann Handley is a book that every single person creating content should have and should read and should be able to reference. However, it is like one of the most boring books I've ever read in my life. And because it's like a reference book, right? Like it's, so you've got to read it and understand the concepts that she's describing. But also I did review this book. I mentioned I do book reviews, and I mentioned that it was horribly boring. And yet everyone on my team has a copy of this book because I'm like, you have to read it and you have to know, to reference it. But Ann Handley came across my review and commented on my review on Goodreads saying, I don't know if this makes me, want to laugh or cry. Anyways, I felt horrible that she thought, but it's true.
If you're going to put ridiculously good content on your cover, it should be really good. I remember interviewing someone who was big they taught people how to do storytelling kind of things. In the interview, they told like no stories, and it was pretty boring. I'm like, here's your chance. Tell great stories. We've had a few, and most of ours are really good. But if you're going to put yourself up as this is what I teach, you should be able to deliver it the same.
Yeah.
So that sounds good though, because I would imagine many people listening who are accountants are saying, writing content is not I didn't get to be an accountant by being good at writing content. So a guide or something to help me do that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. These are three that I highly recommend if this is something that you want to get better at with content marketing, or start doing if you're not doing already. These are kind of three starting point books to dig into. Okay, so building an omni-channel strategy. So getting into this a little bit. Again, another side note, funny story, but omni-channel. I went to a training with my team a couple years ago, and the word omni-channel was in one of the sessions. And I'll be totally honest, I was like, what does that mean?
Thank you. I wondered the same. I'm
And
learning.
now I learned this big word, so I'm going to use it all the time, right?
Yeah.
So Rachel, who Tom knows, who's the mastermind behind all of these webinars and making sure they happen, she's on my team. And she explained to me what omni-channel meant, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to use that word now. So omni-channel, basically it's, all of the, how all of the content, like all of these different channels that you can use, right? So I have a definition here, but seamlessly integrating the different storytelling channels available. So creating a uniform, engaging narrative that meets your audience wherever they are. So perfect example, again, we're doing this webinar. We've got, we're doing this webinar with 1 hour of our time. We're teaching on a topic, and we can then, we have this hour-long video that we put on YouTube. And like I mentioned, we get a lot of views on our YouTube after the fact on our YouTube videos. But I can't take this hour-long video and put it on LinkedIn, right? But what I can do is I can take little clips of this video and put them on LinkedIn, and then link to the full video for people to watch the whole thing, right? And I'll get into several examples of ways that you can cross promote things on different channels and speak to people on those different platforms. But anyway, so omni-channel, I'm gonna stick with that word. So I did a webinar a couple months ago, maybe on building your content windmill.
Yep.
And if you didn't watch it, and that's a topic that interests you, it's on our YouTube channel, but this is a slide from that where I talk about, you can see all these little gears that are turning there. This is kind of showing how all of these pieces can work together. So we've covered kind of what is content marketing, and what are all those things, ways that we can put content out there. But one of the things that I think people tend to do is, like, we're busy, right? So I do a speaking event. I put out one post about the fact that I did that speaking event, and that's it. Like, I think when we're busy, that's what we do. We put it out there, I did it, I move on, right? But I can now take that speaking event, if it's recorded especially, and I can turn that into an article, right? So this particular webinar, my team will take this and they'll help write an article that will be, me talking about content marketing. We do that with every piece of audio that we can, because we can get so much more out of it. But then, we will post that on social media before and after the webinar, or, whatever speaking event, take an article, we'll write the article, post that somewhere, also put that on social media. So you can see how all of these things are connected, and that we have to remember that we have all of these platforms for being able to put that information out there and reach our audience.
Yeah. And Kelly, I know your team also divides longer videos up into many short ones. So you mentioned this a little bit, but you could take this webinar, maybe it turns into 6 different little quick things that people can look at on LinkedIn that says, in 2 minutes, learn about all the different platforms, or what omni-channel marketing means, or something like that. And so you've just turned that into resources too.
Yep. So, and I'll share in a minute here, I'll share an example of that, and also tools to use, right? So, and actually the screen kind of alludes to that. So, creating this cohesive strategy where everything works together and you become more efficient. How do we get there? So first of all, define your channels. Then we're going to create a content map, and then we're going to use the right tools. Use tools to your advantage as much as possible. So define your channels. Again, I think we focus on LinkedIn. We also create content on a lot of these different places. I say we focus on LinkedIn. I would say YouTube and LinkedIn are probably our 2 primary focuses, but we also make video clips and we share them on TikTok, and we share them on Instagram Reels, and so we do not all of these things, but a lot of these things. But you might find, like I mentioned, we have a couple of firm owners that we've worked with that are just like they focus on Clubhouse. Like Clubhouse and LinkedIn might be their two primary things. So you don't have to do all the things, but you gotta just pick like what are the things that I want to focus on and just be very consistent with those specific platforms and not trying to spread yourself too thin in all the places, but defining like these are the 2 or 3 or however many I want to focus on and spend my time doing well, right?
I wonder in some cases if you're not doing a lot for marketing, you want to do more. I wonder if oftentimes it looks like a New Year's resolution. I've heard this. I am going to spend, 4 hours every single week and I'm going to post all the time. And after 2 weeks, you'd realize you can't give up and you completely quit. I have
You
a
calling
feeling
me
that
out
many
on it's
people,
February 1st. Are you calling me out on my New Year's resolutions here, Tom?
I'm not, but what I like is your idea of can you start small and say, I'm going to stick with this. And maybe you build from there as opposed to saying, I already feel busy and I'm going to get up at 4:30 every single morning and exercise and be at the gym. And after the third day, when you don't do it, then you quit completely versus I'm going to do this like, on maybe a somewhat more reasonable schedule. So I
Yeah.
like what you're saying, Kelly, that start with what you know and you can build and get something going versus thinking you could jump in off immediately and be great at this.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, so, I mentioned like creating content, putting it out there where your audience is, right? But like,
Mhm.
it's so important to also know what you're good at. Like I mentioned, so I've heard criticism before in the accounting world about like, who's gonna like see a video on TikTok, right? Like,
Yeah.
maybe true. I've also heard from an accounting firm owner who found us through our TikTok videos. So, and he was
Yes.
like, everyone watches TikTok. I'm like, I know, right?
Yeah.
Like, so there's, yes, like you can be in all the places and what's that essentialism, the book by Greg McKeown that he talks
Yes.
about like doing all the things and spreading yourself thin in all these different directions or picking like the one thing and like how you can excel in that one area.
Yes.
Now we're talking about omni-channel marketing, so you don't want to just pick the one thing, right? You want to pick at least a couple, but focusing specifically on those and not trying to be all over the place with all of these things.
Yeah.
So even if it's TikTok, I will fully support you. Reach out to me if you're on TikTok, and we'll make sure we follow you and connect. Because I think TikTok's a great channel to meet people for accounting, finding clients that way.
Mhm.
But you also have to do it right. You have to be fully invested in it. And like you said, like I'm committing to this and I'm going to do it.
Sure.
That's really important. Um, okay, so building our content map. So I mentioned a couple times now that we start with some sort of audio or video content. So you can see on the left side, this is kind of our starting point. Also speaking events. So speaking events can be a part of this strategy if you're getting them recorded or if in some way you get a hold of that audio. So we've got podcast webinars, right? And then from there, we can take that. And I mentioned, that we'll turn this into an article by me. So if we do a podcast episode, it might be an article. If we do a full hour webinar, it might be a couple articles or blog posts from that. Depends on kind of what we cover in it, but sometimes we can get 2 or 3 articles out of it. From there, we turn a lot of things into carousels, so a carousel is like and I'll show you an example in a minute, but when you're on our Instagram, for example, you might see like 5 ways to do this, whatever. And then you have to scroll to see those 5 things individually as different images on Instagram. We also do that on LinkedIn. And the reason for that is the more people are engaging with your content. So if you've captured their attention on screen 1 and then they're sliding through your images, that helps with the algorithm. And the more people are engaging with it, the more Instagram or LinkedIn will push that out to more people to see your content. So in a lot of ways, like if you're covering something in a podcast or a webinar, you're already creating the like the basis of those carousel posts. It's just then about identifying what were those 5 things that I said and turning that into a piece of content then that you can share and engage on that specific platform.
Mhm.
And then social media. Down at the bottom, we've got video clips. So Tom mentioned, we turn a lot of our videos or our webinars and our podcasts into video clips. So we've got an hour-long video, but we can clip that into, I don't even know how many you can get out of an hour, but a lot of 1-minute clips that you can then use on TikTok, on Instagram Reels, on your Facebook. I'm forgetting one of them.
LinkedIn is one that
LinkedIn, yes, thank
those
you.
always catch me when it's the like 1 minute. What's the top 3 tips for this? I'll watch the short ones where I probably am not going to click on a 1 hour one, at least not when I'm scrolling through things.
Right. And that's a really key point on LinkedIn is, so we always try to do a variety of different types of posts, and I'll show you examples of those in a second. And the reason for that is because it captures people's attention. You don't see videos, and not everyone's sharing a video. It's not TikTok, right? So
Yeah.
when you share a video, but not every single time, but when you're sharing videos, sometimes it captures people's attention.
Yeah.
And then all of these things kind of lead into, like, then you can repurpose a lot of this in your newsletters, if you're doing those, or your email content that you're sending out to your list, and then all of those pointing back to your website. I know we've got to move on here, so I'm going to go through these fairly quickly, but I did want to share a couple of like actual examples, real world examples. So we've got here, you were just asking me about Geraldine Carter. So
Yes.
so Geraldine Carter, we've had her on our podcast and webinars several times. So this is a perfect example. She was on the Modern CPA Success Show, which is one of our podcasts that Tom is one of the hosts.
That. Yep.
Yeah. So we had her on, right? And then that content was then turned into an article, you can see, by Hannah. So an article that is then Hannah talking about a specific topic, which was then turned into a carousel post. So you can only see image number 1 of the carousel post, but that third image there that says 3 questions all CPAs should ask prospective clients. It's then you scroll to see the 3 questions, and then there's a CTA at the end, or sorry, a call to action at the end. So that then turned into a carousel post, and then one example of a video post taking a snippet of Geraldine talking within that podcast episode that then can be shared in, on this particular format, could be on TikTok, LinkedIn, Instagram Reels. Whoops, there we go. Another example. So that was just one of like 3 pieces of content that were generated from one piece of content, right? The starting point. Here's another one. Starting point is the Young CPA Success Show, which is another one of the podcasts that we do. And we have Joey and Hannah are our 2 hosts for that, and their guest Victor. The second column from the left is 3 different types of Instagram posts that we created from that. The top one is an audio post, which you can't see this, but in this because of the static image, but those lines there move when somebody scrolls on it, so it catches their attention. Like they see that moving, and so if they don't have their audio on, they know there's an audio playing and they can turn it on if they want to. The middle one is a quote from the guest, and then the bottom one is a video snippet, which you can see at the bottom, then says watch the full episode on YouTube. So capturing their attention with a 1-minute kind of golden nugget from the episode that we then hope will direct them to the YouTube video to watch the whole thing.
Kelly, in our second poll question, we asked the barriers, and you're probably not surprised time was the biggest barrier that people found. Do you want to talk for a minute or so about what we've done with Upwork and external resources in case someone's a small firm and says, I don't have the staff and I don't have writers and I don't think I can do all this myself? Or maybe you'll say, yes, I think you can do it yourself.
So yes, I think you can do it yourself if you're doing starting from where you're at, right? Like, and doing very minimal, but the more you do, the more help you need. And I'm going to get into tools here, I think, in the next slide. I could be wrong, but let me just wrap this one up, and then I think we'll address that question. So then this is also just showing additional ways that one piece of content on the left side turned into then an article, another video post, or video clip, and then you could see the guest then shared this episode on his LinkedIn, and then Hannah shared it. So all of these different ways that we got the audience, or got this message out to the audience that we wanted to reach. Okay, so here is the slide I was thinking. Okay, I'm not going to cover all of these. We don't have that much time, but if you have specific questions about any of them, put those in the questions box. And I'll try to address those, but I want to cover a couple of these specifically. So when we were putting these slides together, Christine reminded me of the fact that we used to, 2 years ago, a year ago, it wasn't that long ago, I used to go through every single episode, and I would I would write down timestamps of when somebody said something, some golden
Oh,
nugget,
uh-huh.
something fascinating, right? And then I would go through and I would clip it. And then Christine on my team would help, create the post for Instagram or for whatever. Um, since then, AI has helped dramatically with some of these processes. So video AI is a tool now that we use that does that automatically for us. So instead of me spending hours coming up with these clips, we now have video AI, which you can take your entire video, put it into video AI, and it will tell you what those golden nuggets are from, like what those clips are that you could share. So it will create that for you. You can also put in branding into it. So when it creates the videos, you already have it like formatted the way that you want it. So that is, if you're doing a podcast, if you're doing webinars, anything video, that is an invaluable tool that has saved us hours and hours of time with every video that we do. Also Pod Squeeze. So we use that. That pulls, so every podcast episode we do, so if you're doing a podcast, we put that through Pod Squeeze, and it helps us create the show summary, the show notes. It creates some social media posts. We don't always use it word for word, but it gives you a starting point for that social media content. So so yes, if you're doing, if you're doing your own podcast and you're spending time on that, you can then use a couple of these tools and you can do it yourself, right? Like if you're limited on time, again, batch your time and try to make the most of that 2-hour window that you have, and utilizing these tools to help you be the most efficient that you can be. We do also, like Tom mentioned, we do hire contractors through Upwork. I'm a big fan of Virtual Coworker, which is a virtual assistant agency that we use. And so you can get help in those things, but some of these tools also can help you be really efficient with your time and get more out of your time, where then you can have somebody do the scheduling for you. Oh, another one I wanted to mention on here is Later. So we do a lot of our scheduling through Later also. So if you are doing it yourself, you're creating these clips, you are creating these posts, or even if you have somebody creating the post for you, but you kind of want to be in control of the schedule. And let's say you're batching it on Friday mornings, you can schedule out your post for the next week using a tool like Later, so that you can kind of set it and forget it, do the work Friday morning, and then walk away. And next week is all kind of happening without you having to think about it every day.
Yeah, and Kelly, I think of Upwork. When I started working here 6 years ago, they asked me to write an article about what it was like to go from an office to a remote kind of job. And it was intimidating to write the article. But what they said is come up with a rough draft and we'll have a contractor who is a writer turn it into a fairly polished thing. That made it so much easier. When I was like, I can get you all of my ideas and spend, I don't know, I spent an hour writing the whole thing where I probably would have spent 3 or 4 times, and it wouldn't have been in the kind of style that you wanted. And the writer sort of knew this is the basic style that we like ours to be in. So they did that. So I like that idea of contractors if that's the result you want.
Yeah. So, okay. So to speak a little bit more on that though, Tom. So
Mm-hmm.
yes, you can do that. So you can start with like, here's my thought, you type something up, whatever, send it to a contractor. They can help refine it and make it, more presentable. So you can do that. Another big thing that we do here is trying to get as much audio or video, like I said, from our subject matter experts as we can, because the marketing team can then take that and turn that into something. If
Yes.
you're assigning out work to somebody on Upwork, so if you do a podcast episode or something recorded, it doesn't even have to be that. It can just be you talking in your car and recording something on a topic. Like, I want to talk about financial forecasting. I'm going to record myself and talk on this topic for, I was going to say 30 minutes. It doesn't have to be that long, 15 minutes,
Sure.
whatever. Then you can send that to a writer, and that makes their job so much easier because they already got from you the main pieces, the main
Good
pieces
point.
you want to cover, and they can then turn that into an article. So you can do that fairly inexpensively. One other tip, and this is almost, you can almost be dangerous with this. So I want to caution you on this, but ChatGPT. So I added that into the
Yes.
slide because I do not recommend just going into ChatGPT and saying, write me an article on financial forecasting. Like, that's not going to get you quality content that you can put out there. However, you can train Chat GPT. You can train it in your voice. You can give it a lot of like feedback and guidance to come up with content that is decent, right? Like you can, however, you're going to hear different perspectives on that from different people, and some will say like absolutely not. I would not say absolutely not. It's definitely a time saver, but you have to take the time to train it and to learn how to properly use it. Maybe that's something we can do in another webinar sometime. But anyway, it is a tool that can really help you kick out content quickly, but you got to use it right.
Yeah. Yeah. You want your audience to see a really good article, and just quickly publishing mediocre work doesn't come out. And I think it's what ChatGPT often gives you. But if you want to brainstorm ideas and get some general things, I think it can be great. But like you said, to say, write me an article, if you think you're going to cut and paste it and publish it, I think that's a mistake.
Yeah. 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 You can get it to that point, but you have to know what you're doing too.
Sure.
So I don't say everyone should just go and like say, write me an article on this. You have to use it widely. Yeah. Okay, so I know that we covered those tools really quickly, but I purposely put everything in this screen so that people can, take this, learn. These are all the tools that my team uses to create content efficiently and to get it out there. Just last piece, just want to wrap it up with the 5 steps to an effective content strategy. So creating those posts, so making time to create, and it can all often fall to the back burner, right? Like I'll do that tomorrow. But taking the time to create, post that content, repurpose it. So figuring out how to repurpose that content or where you want to repurpose it, measuring your results and what's happening. So if something's not working, stop doing it, right? But if you've done these things and you feel like you've given it a significant effort and it's not working, then okay, maybe time to move on, and then adapt. So where are we getting the most results? Where am I most efficient with my time and getting this out there, and kind of adapting that strategy and continuing on that flywheel. Tom and I have learned a lot about flywheels recently. So this is our flywheel content marketing. So that is kind of just wrapping that up. And I think Tom, you've got some final wrap-up slides. I'll pass it over to you.
I do. Thanks, Kelly. And I looked, and we don't have other outstanding questions for that. Yeah. So thank you very much for that. If you'll jump to the next slide, we've got, if people want to keep learning with us. So Kelly mentioned the Modern CPA Success Show. We would encourage people. There is a specific episode of our webinars that we had. Steve Pope was on our webinar a couple times, and he will help people kind of work through and do this and get you set up. So if what you learned from Kelly and you're not let me get the tool and figure it out myself, that's an option. So I'd encourage you watch that and see if that's something you would do. He talks about similar things, but he's also willing to help people with the nuts and bolts of actually getting that started for you. So maybe a really good thing to do. If you jump to the next slide, to be a little bit more interactive with us, we do have a Slack community, the CFO community. You can see in the list several different things we have in there, but you have other CPAs that are joining this and asking questions and sharing information. It's something that we curate also. So I would encourage people to do that. There is a free month access, so you could try it for a month and see if this is something that looks of interest to you, to go ahead and do that. I had mentioned at the beginning that I'm a virtual CFO with our service. We have a course that teaches people how to do everything that we do. It includes a whole section on marketing, as Kelly had talked about, our forecasting, our pricing tool, everything that we do. It is 24 CP credits, so it's an intensive course of 15 modules. As you complete, there's a coaching session that Adam Hale and I will do with people. We also do a weekly meeting, and so it's a chance for people to come in and talk about how it's going. Often that's a refresher. I've done several times with someone saying, can you just show us the pricing tool and how you would price an engagement? And so we do that in addition, but you could actually say, let me tell you my exact client. And we've done that and said, here's what we would charge for that. And you get some discounts, but we'll give you everything that we have for that. And then finally, if you're like, that sounds really cool, but I would rather just do it for someone, don't want to start on my own, we are looking for great people. And so we'd encourage people to check us out for that. Kelly, that brings us to the end. Thank you for this information. This is really helpful. And I think as people get the slides that we mentioned at the beginning, you had a lot of different things in it that people can go back and refer to. So I hope people will take advantage of that.
Yeah. And if people have questions at the end, feel free to reach out to us, and we're happy to continue the conversation.
Sounds great. Thanks, Kelly. Have a good day.
All right.